it was the Pittsburgh Steelers that didn't show up in the playoffs this weekend. And he did, as Bobby said, banish his Steelers ghosts by stomping on them, really. And even if a couple of touchdowns in garbage time aside, really it was probably a worse beatdown performance-wise than the scoreline let on. The quarterback issues in Pittsburgh just really told over the last 6 weeks. It was kind of crazy because there was just so much more data of Russell playing how he was playing for his first 3 to 4 weeks over the course of his career. It was like, oh, it's working. It's like the Russ thing. It's working again. And then it all just started to sort of fall apart. And you saw that Arthur Smith rigidity that got him in so much trouble as a head coach. I mean, what was the drum we were banging about him as a head coach was that rigidity, right? His inability to flex and move and change. That was his biggest critique. And as an OC, you're moving in different water, right? When it comes to that stuff, you're trying to turn a boat around in a much more expansive lake, right? But still, he just couldn't seem to make adjustments. You know, he couldn't seem to get those blocking schemes right for his running backs. He didn't want to use Warren when Warren was displaying better hole hitting and yards per carry ability. He was just like doubling down and sticking with Najee. This is stuff that we've seen him do as a head coach. And Tomlin obviously just gives the keys to the offense to his guy. That's what, I mean, that you could level that criticism at him really as an offensive coach. I mean, I think I would. And yeah, I mean, they just got figured out, man. Like they really just got figured out in the last 5 or 6 weeks of the season. I think we've sort of had the Tomlin conversation, and I'm willing to, of course, accept any notes on why this falls at his door, of course. But they also have a really big QB issue there. They have a really big offense issue. That offense has been bad to watch for a few years now, with the exception of a few weeks this season, if we're really being honest. And the defense, it's like, even when I don't know if they showed up, but if the best defense shows up against the best offense in the playoffs in the NFL now, I think the offense comes out on top like 9 times out of 10 if both are playing to the best of their ability. And I just think you saw like the Ravens have such an embarrassment of riches. Like they can just do whatever they want whenever they want, right? And even without Zay Flowers in there, a factor I thought was going to be much bigger. You can't. The edge rushers got really selfish going around the outside trying to get to Lamar. You got to contain him. You might not get as many sacks. You might not touch him as much, but you got to contain him. Like because he's just going to rip you up if you start going outside. And it became like obviously lopsided in the pass rush, which was really surprising to me. I thought that there was going to be a little bit more of a back and forth and battle in there. And then at the end, they just killed him with 1,000 cuts with Derrick Henry. They're like, oh, we can run him now. It's the playoffs. Just give him some moves up the middle because we've already beat these guys up. Where do you go from here if you're Pittsburgh? I mean, how bad is it?
It's pretty bad. It's bad because you're not addressing the issues that you've had for years and years and years. It's the same thing over and over again. Bad offense and pretty good defense that gets you to a point where you're almost looking like the Cowboys of the AFC. You know what I mean? That's what the Steelers look like right now, which is not good news for Leah.
It's not fair.
It's not though. They really are the Cowboys of the AFC at this point because they're not addressing
they have a much better structure, ownership, history.
Yeah, that's
coach, but on the field, stats, wins, losses, playoffs, like it's the same. They get there, they don't win.
Yeah, I mean, do you guys both get rid of Tomlin? Is that what you do? And do you think they're gonna?
I think Tomlin should want to leave.
He doesn't, though. He doesn't. He said he's not going to waive his clause.
Yeah, I don't know if I would want to like leave the place I've lived for that long. If I've like got a house there and shit, like that would be annoying for your kids and your wife, and at least that factor, right? But like, also, I don't know, like, what do you do if you're Pittsburgh? Like everybody's saying, like, oh, time for them to move on, like change of scenery, like, or change of personnel, banish the ghosts, whatever it is. What do you do? Like, who is the guy you bring in to like be your guy in Pittsburgh if you get rid of Mike Tomlin? Because if you're Pittsburgh, you're thinking, well, we don't really fire coaches after 1 or 2 seasons, so you're worried as a fan that if they really make the wrong decision in that specific postal code, that wrong decision might stick with them for much longer than it should, right? So I wonder, like I don't see an obvious Steelers guy out there that is more obvious to me than Mike Tomlin.
What?
I'd say maybe Ben Johnson, but that would be a little bit because you could say like this might be the future of coaching, as Mike brought up earlier. But I don't know, man. I mean, that's I think the where do you go from there? Like when we got rid of Lovie Smith, everybody was sort of like, it's time for Lovie to move on, blah, 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 blah. And it's this assumption that like your next guy is going to be as good as the guy you have now. And it's like, I don't know, like how many good coaches are there? Like not that many, honestly.
He's got to find a quarterback, man. That's I know
At
that's
least
so
give him a
simple and it's the way it
QB.
goes, but he's got to find himself a quarterback somehow. I know,
Yeah.
he famously told Chase Young, "I don't lose enough to get guys like you,"
Right.
and that's kind of beating him over the stick of his
Could
own
I interest
success,
you in a
but
Kirk
still.
Cousins?
No. You wouldn't you
Could I
rather
interest
have
you in
Sam
a-
Darnold?
1 year?
Can I interest you in a JJ McCarthy trade?
Why
So
not?
you think
Yeah.
JJ McCarthy is better
Or
than
Sam Darnold?
Justin?
No, I think that you got to try something else. Russ didn't work, and I think
No, I
that
said
my
Justin
point.
Fields. Like get Russ out of there.
Oh, then
Like,
Justin
why not?
Fields. All right. Well, then can I interest you in the future under Justin Fields? I mean,
Yes.
I don't know. I mean, I've
Because
just
that might. But if you keep Tomlin, that might be the thing, and just have one year where he doesn't get over 500, he might lose enough games to get somebody like the next guy, right?
But who's in it? And like Arch Manning. Like I don't. Is that who you're looking for? Like down the pipe, because there's a shortage of good quarterbacks.
Who's the kid from
There's a-
Ohio
there's a-
State that's not eligible this year, but will be next year?
Smith, the wide receiver.
No, it's the quarterback that everyone's like he would be the top quarterback in the draft right now if he could. He might not be from Ohio State.
Will Howard.
If that's the Ohio State quarterback, that might be right, but that's probably not the right name. But anyway, I'd also like. Do you go after Sam Darnold? I just don't get into it because he's gonna command $40 million a year.
Well, I think he lost a bit of the
That's
bag.
absurd.
Well, we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I think he lost the Vikings bag, right? Like I think he did. So I don't know. Like, are we sure that's the market for Sam Darnold? Because like that was a pretty bad loss of earnings this past weekend. And if
Russ earned $39 million this year, just $1 million from the Steelers though.
I mean, they were doing victory laps on how little the Steelers had to pay those two QBs,
Yeah.
though. You know what I mean? Like that seemed like a really good business decision for a year.
Yeah, just go all in.
Yeah, I mean, aren't we coming into his 5th-year option though? Isn't it time? Isn't it time to decide? Like you have to pick up his option, give him a year, and then I guess it's not a bad idea. He already rejected like veteran QB mentorship in Chicago, but it was Andy Dalton, so I don't know. Like maybe if you bring in somebody that he might actually respect, if you bring, but it was also like a Super Bowl winner in Big Dick Nick, so it was, and he just didn't want to talk to those guys. I kind of get why. If you were to bring in a Kirk Cousins. Like, because like I don't know what the relationship is like with Russ, and I don't know if you can just be like, yeah, Russ, you want to stick around and be the backup, because that's kind of what you're doing, and then you're putting a little bit of pressure on Fields where you're saying like Russ is sitting there if you have like 2 bad games in a row, which I don't know if that's good in the modern NFL anymore.
An interesting position as far as this podcast goes, that your second favorite team will now be quarterbacked by Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, it does.
Like, that'll be fun. That'd be so much fun to listen to.
Yeah, that'd be hard. That'd be an internal struggle for sure. That'd be like a romantic poem from the 1800s. I'd be lamenting my existence.
You would have to watch Kirk Cousins every Sunday for 18 weeks.
Yeah, it's bad. I mean, you say second favorite team. It's like, like they're definitely the team I support in the AFC. It's when it's not your team, it's really hard to like trudge with a team, right? Like even though I do want them to do well for like my wife's sake, it's more of a selfish thought of like I don't want her to be in a bad mood.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but it's also like it doesn't mean I wasn't like just disgusted watching that fucking offense over the last 5 weeks. I mean, it was just like, good God, like they just can't do anything right.
In this game though, like statistically, again, I know that you hate when I do this, but like if you didn't watch,
but it was like the points didn't matter. The points didn't matter when they got him.
Russ had better stats than Lamar, just not running. I mean,
yeah.
If you're the
but he didn't.
If you're the Pittsburgh, right? No,
but he didn't though. Like he did, but he didn't. Like it's like you watch the game. It's just doesn't.
How do you allow
it's like when he's
300 yards rushing? How?
Like that game was over as soon as it started. It's literally
play the
within 5
Baltimore
minutes of that
Ravens, I
game
guess.
starting.
Like, I don't know. I mean, I think it was a credit to the Steelers that people thought they might even have an outside chance of winning that game, considering how both teams were coming in, you know? Yeah. Thanks for that. Just like the weird, like, jinx part of my brain was like, fucking asshole. But, because it's win-win for you. You know, you just watch the Steelers lose. Like, I love those bets, though. Don't get me wrong. I'm excited when those bets come up.